go about periodizing your nutrition to help your performance? You mentioned a couple of tips already, but if we dive in a bit deeper.
Yeah, let's do that. So periodizing your nutrition just means matching your nutrition intake to your output. And there's a few different ways to do that. But it also doesn't mean that you need to adjust everything. So the main thing you want to adjust when we're talking about periodizing is your carbohydrate intake. So in theory, the longer and harder you train, the more that you need. So to optimize that, you want to put more in. Again, I guess, the theory versus the practical are two very different things. And it's like, yeah, that's great, Jess. I'm about to go and do a 3K session on the field and you want me to eat a giant breakfast. Like, I'm not great at breakfast. That kind of doesn't work. So, the art is in then how it's actually applied. But yeah, the concept is matching particularly carbohydrate intake to that output.
Let's bring caffeine into that equation. So, obviously you'll get a good result with caffeine in the acute phase, but how do you do it over a long season, and particularly if you're playing finals where you're still getting good results from supplementing caffeine?
Yeah, look, caffeine is a supplement that I'm very pro when used in the right way. Like from a health benefits point of view, there's definitely, depending on how much we're talking about, if we're talking a couple of coffees kind of a day, like that very much sits within recommendations. And like, yes, there are individual thresholds and people metabolize it differently. But if we're talking an acute performance outcome, the evidence is clear. Caffeine has a positive physical, central nervous system, psychological performance benefit. But you do need to be quite targeted with it, and you don't necessarily need a whole heap. So the research tells us 1 to 3 milligrams per kilogram. So you think about an 80-kilo athlete, that's 240 milligrams.
What are some ways that you upskill yourself? What's some of your favorite ways to hone your craft and get better year by year?
Yeah, look, it's probably changed over the years, to be honest. Like initially it was on Twitter, reading all the papers, connecting with all the big dogs, like, trying to learn from them. Also like podcasts, obviously times have changed a bit, but like I was really fortunate to go to some great clubs when I traveled overseas, like went to Arsenal, went to AS Roma just to see so there was all this kind of like structured learning, but then there was also just a lot of experiencing different kind of environments.
The ones that want to put on muscle really quickly and bulk up, how do you, what's the best way to go about that for young developing athletes that need to put on critical mass?
Yeah, look, there's, obviously a few ways to go about it. Like education is key. Not just telling them what to eat, but showing them how to eat. So I know that you've had Simone Austin on here and, she spoke a lot about cooking classes. So there's a lot of that. It's not just, it's called procedural knowledge, which is the ability to apply what you've learned. But then I also talk to them a lot about the best way to put on weight. And look, AFL preseason, it's pretty hard to put on a significant amount of weight because of the amount of Ks that they're clocking up and the amount of output. But I do talk to them about their body and how it's going to develop because, men in particular, they're developing up until 21, 22 years of age. So like depending where they're at from a hormone profile will really depend on potentially how much weight they'll put on. And I like to talk to them about their body being a house. So their muscles are the bricks and the cement is the connective tissues, the tendons and the ligaments. And, just because the bricks, we can maybe put on a bit of weight and get them big and strong. But if these connective tissues don't have that ability to move with it, that can present a lot of problems.
What would be your advice for those that are under 18 years of age and with supplements?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's, I definitely talk to them about the pyramid of a pyramid and level of hierarchy. So you imagine that base and foundation at the bottom, the stuff that's really going to cement them and help them be their best selves and also like influence their health and performance. And that's that education piece around energy input matching physical output. And then it's also just educating them on where they're going to get their bang for buck. How the basics done right will be the thing that pays the dividends. Educating them around the risks of supplements and talking to them and also understanding what they're wanting to use and why, and then looping that back into why that food first approach is going to be the way forward.
And there's one for AFL men's and then one specific for AFL women as well. So what would be the two sort of differences in advice in those two different ebooks?
Yeah, look, to be honest, they're quite similar, because again, the recommendations are quite similar, like how to prepare for training, how to prepare for a game. There are some differences around some of the options in terms of preferences, just based on what I've kind of witnessed working in the two.
Yep.
And there's also a little bit more information about hormones, and obviously like what, you know, women need to consider in menstruation and that kind of thing as well. But they are very similar. Because the recommendations are very similar. But yeah, those ebooks are complements of the first lockdown, because it was like this project I really wanted to do for a number of years, but never had the bandwidth or time to do it. And COVID was like, right, it's time to do this. And,
get it done.
You know, now we're just rolling them out to everyone. They took a lot of time and energy. So I'm pretty proud of them. Yeah.